Yammy Llargo is one of the first espada that we see within the series when he arrives in the world of the living with Ulquiorra. They were carrying out a reconnaissance mission in order to evaluate whether if Ichigo was a risk to Aizen's plans. Through this introduction, we learn that Yammy is a outspoken, hot-headed individual. Yammy was initially perceived to be a low-ranking espada, but it is later revealed that he is actually the zero-ranking espada. There is controversy surrounding this character, and I have my own personal opinions regarding it, and it's about how he was defeated off screen, and this change from the 10th rank to the 0 rank after Yammy activates his resurrection and it becomes evolved because of his rage. We get to see just how incredibly powerful he truly is. But despite all of this build up and this transformation, Yammy was ultimately defeated off screen. So in this video, I want to talk about everything that we know about Yammy's character, as well as going over these controversial points and giving my opinion on them. So without further delay, let's dive into my character analysis of Yammy Llargo, the espada who was given rage as its aspect of death. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Yammy makes his debut appearance in chapter 190 of the manga and in episode 113 of the anime. He is the largest out of all of the espada. He has red markings under his eyes, orange eyebrows, and the remains of its hollow mask are a jawbone, which consists of 8 teeth. He has a tattoo of his espada rank on his left shoulder, and when he activates his released form, the 1 disappears, leaving just a 0. Yammy tends to get bored very quickly, especially during battle, and it is for this reason that he tries to get as much enjoyment as possible from killing and crushing those who are weaker than him. And as demonstrated when he had first arrived within the world of the living with Ulquiorra, he tends to take part in battle without any real strategy. He throws around his brute strength, hoping to land an attack on his opponent. Now, what I find strange is that Yammy was promoted from the 10th ranking espada to the 0 rank, when it is evident that he respects characters like Ulquiorra and treats them with a sense of seniority. Yammy was also unable to use pesquisa, and as a result he was unable to determine the strength of his opponents, or whether if they were even worth fighting, and it is for this reason that he had continued to ask Ulquiorra for input, asking him whether if the opponents who had confronted them were trash or not. Yammy is a pretty brutal character, and he treats the other Arrancar around him as trash, and this is demonstrated when his arm is healed within Hueco Mundo, and he immediately kills the medic who had attended to his injury just so that he could test the strength of his reattached arm. We don't really know anything about Yammy before his first appearance within the manga, where he voluntarily chooses to accompany Ulquiorra to the world of the living in order to gather information on Ichigo. When the espada first arrive, they create a large crater. This gets the attention of passers-by who gather around it, and Yammy assumes that they are looking at him, but he is unaware that ordinary humans cannot see spiritual beings. Feeling like he is being watched by pests, he begins to suck out the souls of all of the humans nearby. When Chad and Orihime arrive to face off against Yammy, Yammy brutally beats Chad, and this entire encounter is censored within the anime, but within the manga you get to see how gruesome Chad's injuries were, as well as how badly beaten Orihime was. And in addition to this, the graphic nature of Yammy's arm being severed when Ichigo arrives to assist them. Yammy is actually the first espada that we see taking part in battle. He is initially losing his battle against Bankai Ichigo until his inner hollow starts to take over. It is at this point that Yammy takes the upper hand as he repeatedly punches Ichigo. We of course know that Urahara and Yoriichi appear to assist him, and they prove that Yammy is no match for them as they easily deflect his attacks. And before they can really hurt Yammy, Ulquiorra intervenes as he swiftly strikes the espada in his stomach, forcing him to retreat. The two of them end up returning to Hueco Mundo as they conclude that Ichigo is not a threat to Aizen. While in Hueco Mundo, Yammy has his arm reattached, and he later returns to Karakura Town with Grimmjow, Luffy, and Wonderwise. During this second invasion of Karakura Town, Yammy faces off against Hitsugaya, as they speak about how Hitsugaya is the 10th captain while he is the 10th espada. While battling him, Yammy is able to break the ice of Hitsugaya's Shikai. He later unleashes a surprise attack upon Urahara, which thankfully doesn't have much of an effect on him, and this does confuse Yammy, but Urahara explains that he has been switching with a portable gi guide that he has on him in order to avoid any serious injury. This This of course angers the hot-headed Yammy, as he assumes that Urahara is looking down on him. Before their battle can continue, Yammy is returned to Huecomundo by a Negation beam. Now the espada doesn't do much during the Huecomundo arc, aside from being informed that Ichigo, Chad and Uryu have invaded Huecomundo. He makes some remarks and complains about the intruders with Arunyero, Xyloporo, Neutra and Baragon. We learn that when Yammy isn't taking part in battle, he typically eats in order to replenish his strength so that he is ready for his next encounter. And we see this in chapter 342, where he leaves his palace after eating and he finally decides to take action against the invaders of Las Noches. He appears during Ichigo and Ulquiorra's final battle, as he asks Ulquiorra to allow him to fight Ichigo, but Ulquiorra refuses his assistance as he tells Yammy to either go back to sleep or to face off against the other invaders. He then notices Orihime stood beside Loli and Minoli. He successfully knocks Minoli through a wall, and as he is about to kill Loli, she releases a Zanpakuto, but Yammy is able to defeat her with ease. When his attention turns towards Orihime and he's about to kill her, Uryu arrives. He fires a Quincy arrow at his shoulder which manages to knock down the oversized espada. However, Uryu's arrows are unable to pierce through Yami's hardened skin. When he is about to attack Uryu, he triggers a anti-Arrancar landmine, which Mayuri had given to Uryu. Uryu had planted these landmines on the ceiling of the floor below. It results in Yammy falling through all of the lower pillars below him, as he falls right to the floor of Las Noches. In chapter 352, we see him emerge from the desert of Las Noches. He then interrupts Rukia's battle with Rudburn, and he also notices Renji and Chad nearby. While he is on the ground, he is able to sense the increase in Ichigo's Reiatsu, and he also senses Ulquiorra's Reiatsu fading away, and it upsets him that he wasn't able to finish off Ichigo himself. Renji then goes on to state that Yami's Reiatsu is the weakest out of all of the espada, but when Yammy releases his Zanpakuto, his number 10 tattoo transforms into a 0, as he reveals that the espada rankings do not run from numbers 1 to 10, but rather from 0 to 9, and he is in fact the strongest out of all of the espada. Now I personally feel like this change was far too forced and really unbelievable in my opinion. In terms of brute strength, Yammy may well be the strongest, but in terms of tactics and strategy, he falls far below the likes of other espada like Xyloporo, Neutra, and even Ulquiorra. But what do these espada rankings mean anyway? Since Ulquiorra was the 4th ranked espada, but he was the only one with a second resurrection out of all of the other members. While in his release state, Yammy easily takes care of Chad and Renji, and he manages to apprehend Rukia. When he throws her to the ground, he is surprised to see that Ichigo has appeared and has saved her. When Yammy charges a Saro, it ends up exploding in his face as Ichigo fires a Getsuga Tensho towards him. It is at this point that he blindly starts punching on the ground. He is not even looking at where he is attacking, hoping that he is going to hit Ichigo somehow. While he is battling Ichigo here and he reveals to him his 0 ranking tattoo, he states that he views the other espada as trash. But Ichigo isn't really bothered by how strong Yammy is, because he is still going to defeat him, and he is rather disgusted by the lack of respect Yammy shows towards his comrades. When Ichigo struggles to summon his hollow mask, he is grabbed by Yammy, but it is then that their battle is interrupted by the arrival of Byakuya and Kinpachi, and it is through Yami's character that we see this fascinating team up between these two unlikely captains. Now most of the battle between Kinpachi, Byakuya and Yammy occurs off screen, and we cut back to it here and there, like in chapter 382. When the two of them begin to grow tired of battling against an opponent as weak as Yammy, Kinpachi tells Byakuya to finish him off, as the two of them start to argue over who should defeat the espada. This of course angers Yammy. He ends up firing an incredibly large Saro towards them. This motivates the two captains to work together to take the Arrancar down, but Yammy appears to have survived the attack, and he grows even more angry, which results in his body increasing in size and his resurrection actually changing in form. He tells Kinpachi and Byakuya that making him angry is the last thing that they want to do, as he reveals that he increases in strength the more angrier that he becomes. In chapter 383, we see Yammy taunting Byakuya and Kinpachi, as he dares them to continue making him even angrier, because he promises to make their deaths humiliating and painful. And this is really the last that we see of this battle, and unfortunately the outcome occurs off screen, because we learn about the outcome of their encounter in chapter 422, right at the end of the Arrancar saga. We see them returning to the Soul Society as they both appear to be injured from their battle. When they are asked about their battle against Yammy, they state that it was a total bore, and we cut back to the oversized Yammy collapsed on the ground, as the two captains appear to have dealt enough injury to have left him on the ground to die. Yammy momentarily regains consciousness as he sees that his pet has found him. He wonders why it has followed him, as he refers to it as a stupid dog, but eventually he falls unconscious again, and he ends up succumbing to his injuries and eventually dying a pretty uninteresting uninteresting and boring death. And that's Yammy's character pretty much summed up. It appears as though Kubo didn't even care enough to give him a proper send-off, and it's a real shame that most of his final battle was off-screen, because I would have loved to have seen Kinpachi and Byakuya working together more. These two characters who have polar opposite personalities. We saw a brief glimpse as to how their dynamic continued to enrage Yammy, and despite him boasting that he was the most powerful espada, in the end his claims amounted to nothing, because strength without speed and agility is pretty useless. Now, because Yammy was given rage as his aspect of death, it is pretty symbolic to the nature of his character. Now obviously Yammy does have a short temper and he is easily enraged, but typically when you feel the emotion of anger, you usually lack all rationality and you are unable to think clearly. And I feel like this perfectly describes Yammy, as evidently he isn't the most intelligent character, and I think a lot of his irrational thinking and irrational behavior is linked to the theme of rage and anger that is instilled within him. He had sacrificed all of his other faculties and relied completely on rage in order to boost his strength, but without an ability to think rationally and to strategize, all of that strength amounted to nothing in the end. Another interesting point is about his evolved resurrection, which is probably the closest thing to a second resurrection that we see from the other espada, as we know that Ukiura is confirmed to have the only second resurrection out of all of the other members. Now Yammy isn't the most deep or well-written character to feature within Bleach, so there isn't much symbolism to draw upon. He is simply a really powerful guy who represents rage and anger. I think if Kubo would have given his final battle a bit more importance, then I would have cared about Yammy a bit more, and his transition from the 10th ranking espada to the 0 rank would have been more believable. And in the end, Yammy ends up being a character who I would even go as far as to say doesn't have wasted potential, because he is very consistently written from his first to last appearance. So what more is there to expect from him? He had several lackluster encounters within the series, he was schooled by Ichigo and then by Urahara, and he was ultimately humiliated by Kinpachi and Byakuya, who saw him as nothing more than a nuisance. So with this video completed, I've spoken about all 10 of the espada members, and it's unfortunate that we're not really ending on a high here, but regardless, after having made videos on each of the members of the espada, I've grown to really appreciate them far more than I did all those years ago when I'd first seen them within the anime. I think Kubo employs a lot of subtle writing when it comes to the espada, and a lot of it isn't spoon-fed to us. And after reading through every appearance of each of the members of the espada, I've grown to really appreciate the style of Kubo's writing, and how he not only creates fascinating character designs, but he also gives them believable personalities and consistent characterization. And this is why the espada members perfectly fit into their respective aspects of death that he has assigned to them. So yeah, this was my video on Yammy Llargo, and we're at the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What did you think about the 10th ranking espada who had transitioned from being one of the weakest espada to the strongest? Do you agree or disagree with my criticisms? I would love for all of you to continue the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach character analysis video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.